Yes, that title is correct. It is not clickbait. It is not a typo. Once upon a time, my girlfriend at the time and I did eat 29,000 calories in a single day, and I'm going to talk about that here. So I think the first question when people see that is going to be, is that real? Did you really track 29,000 calories? What did that look like? So I meticulously track everything. I have since I was pretty much 12 years old. I could go back and look at FitDay. Nobody uses FitDay anymore, but uses MyFitnessPal or something else. I can go back 10 plus years now on FitDay and tell you pretty much the calories and macros I ate on just about any given day, assuming I wasn't like on vacation or anything like that, but even some of those days. And so I'm going to actually post a screenshot from that day. This was probably going back close to 6 years ago now. And I'm going to post all of that so you can see the foods, the breakdown. A lot of these were homemade foods, but we made them ourselves. So we had all of the ingredients. I'm going to post up some pictures here of the ridiculousness of everything we bought and some of the stuff that was cooked. So yes, it was accurately tracked. It was not an easy day. Looking back, it was definitely a silly thing to do, but we just kind of wanted to try and see how much we could eat in a 24-hour period. So that is the first thing I will say. This was over 24 hours. It wasn't like I got up at 8, went to sleep at 10, and you're doing that in about 14 hours. This was over a 24-hour period, but that is one day, and that's the time we did it in. I think the second question would be, why? Why would you do this? I think at the time, cheat days were really common, not just in terms of people cheating on a diet, but in terms of being used for a reason. I might have mentioned on the podcast before that at one point I had a pretty unhealthy relationship with food. Back in 2011, I started working with a coach. This coach incorporated cheat days. Even during bulking periods, he would incorporate cheat days, and he wanted you to eat as much as possible. The guy was not very intelligent. I don't think he was actually that great of a coach. He did help my strength a lot that year. He was a good power lifter, but I don't really think he knew what he was talking about. And I do think there are health ramifications from doing something like that every single week, not only physiologically, but also psychologically. But that kind of spurred me to start having weekly cheat days. And I would do 8,000 calories, 10,000 calories, usually somewhere between there. By 2013, I wasn't doing them as frequently, but I had just dieted down for a cruise. So I had dieted down to be very lean. I was 170 pounds at the time, definitely significantly less muscle. And after that, I was ravenous. I gained way too much weight on that cruise. I gained something like 20 pounds literally in about 5 days. I had edema in my legs. Not a good thing to do. Obviously, a ton was water weight. I lost about 10 pounds after the first day. But that summer, if I look back at any period of my life that really I had a bad relationship with food, it was that summer because I cut down and I was even considering going even leaner. I was talking about going down to the low 160s at that point. And for me, at my height, that would have been very skinny, but I was considering it. But that led to kind of like a binge cycle where, I wasn't bulimic or anything like that. I wasn't throwing up, but I would definitely have a cheat day, and then I would have 2 or 3 days where I would just basically crash diet. And that repeated for a good portion of the summer. That's really the only time in my 15 years of doing this where I really felt like I had this, like I said, unhealthy relationship with food. Other than that, yes, I've had cheat days and cheat meals and all of that, but it's always been under my control. That was one period where I felt like, wow, it actually almost made me sympathize with people who really have a lack of control, because it was the only time in my life I kind of felt like that. So this was in that period. And at the time, we were both dieting, we were both very lean, and we kind of just wanted to see if we just had, we called it like a homemade cheat day, where we had all the recipes that our parents really loved and made for us when we were younger. We were just going to make all of those in one day. And at the time, we were in our low 20s. We thought that was a fun idea. So like I said, I'm going to have some pictures up here of what we made. But there were, macaroni and cheese. We had sticky buns. We had chicken wings. We had crab dip. We had a cheesecake. We had a lot of stuff, and it was it was very difficult. After about halfway through, honestly, it stopped even being enjoyable. I also picked a terrible day to do it because I was working part of that day. This was when I was in dental school, but I was also working part-time at the gym. So after already being grossly full, I had to lug myself to the gym, be there for a few hours, and then come back to eat more food. So I've seen a lot of people talk about these 10,000 calorie challenges. At the time, I had a very ravenous appetite. 10,000 calories was hard to get down, but really not that hard to get down. That was pretty regular for me at the time. Now, honestly, if I have a cheat day, it's maybe 4,000 or 5,000 calories. and I feel completely satiated with that. I don't need any more. I don't really want any more. If I go on a cruise now, I went on a cruise this past summer and I gained maybe like 1 to 3 pounds. It's just not the same anymore. And I'm thankful for that because that was really not a great place to be. But you do see that a lot in this field, in this industry. People who really just have an issue with food and properly being able to incorporate some of these quote unquote junk foods. And like definitely learned lessons from this. So how did I feel that day? I think we were both pretty sick. I think we enjoyed it at the time for what it was. The food was good, but honestly, if you've ever had massive cheat days, you know that that first meal is the best. And after that, things become less and less enjoyable, and you're almost just like waiting around to not be so full to eat your next meal. But if you get into that habit, this was one of the issues with the Body for Life stuff back in the day by Bill Phillips. The routine, the diet, everything is fine. But the problem with having a planned cheat day, especially when you're dieting, if you're really allowed to have anything you want, the problem with that is that you can start getting obsessive with it. Not everybody does, but you can go into that and start getting hungrier and hungrier. And then you start thinking about all the foods that you're going to eat. And it really can become problematic. So by the end of that day, we were both pretty much in a food coma. It was not pleasant. And that's just one of several reasons why I would not recommend doing this. How did I look? Now, unfortunately, I don't have pictures from after the fact, but I very clearly remember, for whatever reason, my stomach has we always just joked, even in college, that I had this like GH gut because I just always had this big belly. If I would have these cheat days, it would stick out to the point that I literally looked pregnant. My brother and I would go to a China buffet or something like that, and he would still kind of look the same afterwards, and I would just have this huge pregnant belly from that. And I don't know why he would be like that and I would be like how I was. I don't know. But after a day like this, it was laughable how extended my stomach was. I'd like to think that I didn't do any like permanent damage there in terms of expanding my waist. But I have always had this kind of blockier waist. And so on that day, I definitely looked very bloated. I don't even remember the exact amount of weight I gained, unfortunately. I think from the start to the end of the day, it was close to something like 8 pounds. It was quite a lot. But I've heard people, like I said, I've definitely gained more than that in the past because of what I was doing beforehand. So in this case, I wasn't strictly dieting. If you want to see a massive rebound, you'll see people who go into a contest. They'll be contest lean. And then from there, they really can gain 10 pounds in a day and sometimes 30 pounds in just a couple of weeks. Now, what you might be surprised to hear is that 1 week later, I was actually down a pound. And no, I don't think this cheat day revved up my metabolism and caused some magic. I think, first of all, your body is very efficient at absorbing calories, but there is a limit to how much it can absorb in one day. I really doubt that all of those calories were absorbed and stored as fat. I'm sure the thermic effect of food was significant. I'm sure the increase in NEAT was significant. And I'm sure I just didn't digest a lot of that food. I think if you were to do that over time, even just for a couple days, you'd gain a massive amount of fat. But to be honest, in this situation, I actually did lose most of that within the week and actually dropped a little bit beyond that. Having said that, I still would not recommend it. Just because you can get away with something doesn't mean it's the best thing to do. Physically, I think you absolutely are going to gain some fat from that. It's hard to quantify how much, but I think you definitely will gain some fat. But aside from just physically, the potential issues with that, again, psychologically, you're just setting yourself up for failure, to go into something and always, again, for a one-time thing, I don't actually think it's that big of a deal. I think it's fine. People doing these challenges for one day, not a big deal at all. I don't want to act like this is going to cause some huge issue. But these weekly cheat days where you think, well, if he lost weight, he can just keep doing this. And you know what? I might have been able to do that again the next week and again the next week, maybe not to the same extent, but big cheat days. And I have done that. I have absolutely gotten quite lean having weekly cheat days. But psychologically, I just don't think it's ideal. I think it just really gets you in a bad mindset of thinking, well, now I'm going to just binge. And your whole day becomes about food. You don't want to do anything on that day. You get up, you've planned all the food that you're going to eat. You sit around and you just eat all day. You don't get anything done. And then the next day, you're actually pretty hungry after, about noon or so. I would always get hungry after a cheat day because now my body's used to all that food. So psychologically, maybe even worse than physiologically, I would not recommend it. If you want to try it one time just to see how much you can eat, I don't really think it's that big of a deal, but it's definitely not something I would be incorporating regularly. So really, this was more of just a story for you guys. I wanted to kind of tell you guys a little bit about things that I've done in the past. Like I said, I've been in this game for a long time, so I've done a lot on extreme ends of everything with this. And at one point, I did have a massive appetite, and I could eat more than almost anybody I knew. Even when I told some of my college friends that I would eat 10,000 calories, they didn't believe me until I showed them my fit day. So this was obviously far exceeding that. And other than, actually, I had one friend who, after college, he got into competitive eating, and he became like the second ranked guy in the world. He was on ESPN. It was kind of bizarre to see this random friend of mine from college on ESPN eating like 100 hot dogs. But other than him, I'd say I could eat more than almost anybody I had met in person, and this obviously showed that. Thankfully, I don't do this anymore. But if you have any questions about the day, anything else about why I did this or what the results were, feel free to ask below. If you like the story, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos.